For most of my life, I believed one thing about America. No matter where you came from, no matter how much money your parents had, if you worked hard enough, one day you'd own a home. Not a mansion, not a beach house, just a place you could truly call your own. A front yard, a garage, maybe a dog running across the lawn. It wasn't just a house, it was proof that you had made it. And for decades, that dream wasn't fiction, it was reality. But then I came across a statistic that completely changed how I look at the American housing market. Over the past decade, hundreds of thousands of single-family homes weren't bought by families. They were bought by corporations. At first, I didn't think much of it. So what? Companies invest in everything. Stocks, office buildings, shopping malls. Why wouldn't they invest in houses? But the deeper I looked, the stranger the story became. Because this isn't just about expensive homes. It's about how one of the biggest wealth-building tools in American history slowly transformed into one of Wall Street's favorite assets. And if that trend continues, the next generation may never experience the version of the American dream their parents grew up believing in. To understand how we got here, we have to go back almost 80 years. World War II had just ended. Millions of soldiers returned home. They wanted jobs, families, children, and above all, a place to live. America faced one of the largest housing shortages in its history. The solution completely changed the country. Instead of building custom homes one by one, developers began building entire neighborhoods, almost like assembly lines. The most famous example was Levittown. Construction crews repeated the exact same process over and over again. The same floor plans, the same materials, the same streets, the same neighborhoods. By eliminating unnecessary costs, they dramatically reduced the price of homeownership. For millions of middle-class Americans, buying a house suddenly became realistic, and something extraordinary happened. Owning a home wasn't considered a luxury anymore. It became an expectation. Parents expected their children to own homes. Banks expected families to buy homes. Politicians built campaigns around home ownership. Even the economy became deeply tied to rising home values. Buying a house wasn't just about having somewhere to sleep. It became the foundation of the American middle class. For decades, the system worked remarkably well. Every mortgage payment slowly increased a family's wealth. Every year, the house became a little more valuable. And by retirement, many Americans had accumulated hundreds of thousands of dollars simply because they owned property. That's why real estate became known as one of the safest investments in America, until something broke. Today, buying that same starter home has become dramatically more difficult. Home prices have increased much faster than wages. Mortgage rates fluctuate. Construction struggles to keep up with demand. But here's what's interesting. Those explanations, while true, don't tell the whole story. Because housing didn't just become more expensive, it became something else entirely. Most people assume they're competing against another family when they submit an offer on a house. That's how the market is supposed to function. But increasingly, that isn't who they're competing against. Imagine you're trying to buy your first home. You've spent years saving for a down payment. You've finally found the perfect place. You call your lender, you schedule the inspection, you prepare your offer. Then, before anyone even reviews your paperwork, someone else buys the house. No negotiation, no financing contingency, no inspection, just cash. And not because they're richer than you, because they're not even a person, they're an investment firm. At first, this sounds almost unbelievable. Why would billion-dollar financial companies want suburban houses? Shouldn't they be buying skyscrapers or office buildings? That question led me to another. When did Wall Street decide that your neighborhood was an investment opportunity? The answer begins in 2008. When most people think about the financial crisis, they picture collapsing banks, stock markets crashing, Lehman Brothers. But for large investment firms, the crisis looked completely different. They saw something almost no one else did. Millions of homes were suddenly worth far less than they had been just months earlier. Entire neighborhoods were flooded with foreclosures. Banks desperately wanted these properties off their books, and ordinary families couldn't buy them. Many had lost their jobs. Others couldn't qualify for mortgages anymore. Even people with stable incomes struggled to obtain financing. Demand collapsed. Prices collapsed. But the houses didn't disappear. Someone was going to buy them. The only question was, who? The answer wasn't millions of first-time buyers. It was institutional investors, companies managing billions of dollars, firms with enough capital to purchase not one house, not 10, but thousands, sometimes entire neighborhoods at a time. Would it generate reliable cash flow? If the answer was yes, they bought it. Almost overnight, thousands of single-family homes stopped being homes first. They became financial assets. And that's the moment the rules of the game began to change. because once Wall Street discovers a profitable asset, it rarely leaves. In fact, this was only the beginning. The real question isn't how corporations entered the housing market. The real question is, what happened after they did? And once we start looking at the numbers, the picture becomes much more unsettling. So how much has the game actually changed? Let's imagine two people. The first is buying a house to live in. The second is buying that exact same house as an investment. At first glance, they're making the same purchase, but they're playing completely different games. A family looks at school districts, commute times, the size of the backyard, whether they'll still love the neighborhood 10 years from now. An investment firm looks at something much simpler: purchase price, expected rent, maintenance costs, projected appreciation, occupancy rate, return on investment. To them, the house isn't a home, it's a spreadsheet, and spreadsheets don't have emotions. Now imagine a young couple earning a combined household income of $110,000 a year. By most standards, they're doing well. They've spent years paying off student loans. They've saved enough for a down payment. They've done everything society told them to do. Then they find a $450,000 home. Sounds expensive, but not impossible, until the math begins. A 20% down payment means they need $90,000 in cash. Closing costs add another several $1,000s. Property taxes, homeowner's insurance, maintenance, utilities. Then comes the mortgage. Depending on interest rates, that monthly payment can easily exceed $3,000 before unexpected repairs are even considered. Suddenly, buying a home isn't just about qualifying for a loan, it's about committing to decades of financial pressure. Now compare that to a large investment company. They're not putting 20% down. They often buy with institutional financing at entirely different scales. They negotiate discounts unavailable to individual buyers. They purchase hundreds of homes in bulk. Maintenance becomes cheaper because they manage thousands of properties. Risk is spread across entire cities. If one house sits empty, it barely affects the business. If one family loses a job, it changes everything. The competition was never equal. We just assumed it was. And then something even more interesting happened. The business model evolved. Initially, companies bought foreclosed homes because they were cheap, but eventually they realized something. They didn't need housing prices to explode. They needed people to keep renting. Think about that for a moment. The less affordable homeownership becomes, the larger the pool of renters grows. The larger the pool of renters, the more valuable rental properties become. It's a feedback loop. As prices rise, fewer people can afford to buy. As fewer people buy, more people rent. As demand for rentals increases, owning rental homes becomes even more profitable. The system begins reinforcing itself. This doesn't mean corporations caused every housing problem. Far from it. America has been underbuilding homes for years. Construction costs have increased. Labor shortages slowed development. Local zoning laws often make new housing incredibly difficult to build. Higher interest rates reduced affordability even further. All of these factors matter. But institutional investors didn't need to create the crisis. They simply learned how to profit from it. And once billions of dollars begin flowing into any market, that market changes. Housing was no exception. Perhaps the biggest shift isn't economic, it's psychological. For generations, Americans viewed a home as the first major step toward financial security. Today, many young adults see it as something permanently out of reach. Some delay marriage, others postpone having children. Many continue renting well into their 30s and 40s. Not because they prefer renting, because they simply can't buy. This changes how entire generations build wealth. Previous generations accumulated equity. Today's renters accumulate monthly receipts. And those two things are not the same. But here's the irony. Institutional investors still own only a fraction of all single-family homes in the United States. They're not buying every house, not even close. So why does this topic receive so much attention? Because markets don't operate only on numbers. They operate on expectations. If buyers believe they'll be competing against companies with billions of dollars, they behave differently. If sellers expect investors to pay cash, they price differently. If developers believe rental communities generate higher returns than affordable starter homes, they build differently. Little by little, incentives shift, and markets follow incentives. So, did corporations steal the American dream? Not exactly. The reality is more complicated. The American dream wasn't taken overnight. It evolved, slowly, quietly, almost invisibly. What was once primarily a place to live gradually became an investment, then an asset class, then a portfolio strategy, and finally, for many people, something they could no longer afford. Maybe that's the real story. Not that houses became expensive, but that homes became financial products. Because once something becomes an asset, it starts competing for investors, not just families. 100 years ago, success meant owning land. 50 years ago, success meant owning a home. Today, for millions of Americans, success may simply mean finding a place they can afford to stay. And perhaps that's the biggest transformation of all. The American dream didn't disappear, it changed owners. The question is, will it ever belong to ordinary families again? Or have we entered a future where the most valuable houses were never meant to be lived in, only owned? If that's true, then maybe the most important question isn't, how much does a house cost? It's, who was it really built for? Thanks for watching.